One of the things that I said I wanted to learn this year was not just how to grow more vegetables in outdoors, but also how to use it inside. So we're going to be doing lots of batch cooking, lots of freezer meals, and lots of trialling recipes for preservation. A bit later on in the year, we're probably going to try some canning with some of my pickles. But today we're just going to try 3 quick recipes. We're not going to can any of them because I'm going to do basically 1 or 2 jars of each, enough that we're just going to eat them straight away. They'll go in the fridge rather than needing to sit on the shelf for up to a few months. We're going to do 3. We're going to dry some peppers. So those are the peppers that we actually picked in last week's video, or maybe the video before that. So that's the last of that harvest to get that preserved, because I think we don't use a lot of fresh chilies in our cooking, but we quite often will kind of add a sprinkle of dried chili peppers in there. So I'm going to try putting those through the dehydrator. We're going to make some candied jalapenos, which I've never actually had before. Sometimes they're known as cowboy candy, but I've suddenly seen loads of them online, and I've got kind of a couple of jars worth of jalapenos left over, and I thought those would be a really great thing to try because they're they're candied jalapenos. They're kind of sweet, vinegary jalapenos in a preserve. They can kind of go in the fridge, and I imagine it'll be delicious on kind of as a topping or a garnish. So I'm really hoping that one turns out well. I've got high hopes. And then the last is a green tomato chutney. So this is a really good way to use up those crops at the end of the year, about this time, that haven't ripened from your harvest. So I actually, this year, all of my tomatoes came in quite a while ago because they got blighted. And I was really lucky in that all but like 2 of them have ripened indoors. But I was slightly disappointed because I was really hoping to try out green tomato chutney. But the stars have aligned because my mum's final harvest of tomatoes have just come in, and she's given me a whole load of green tomatoes that I can use to trial this recipe. I've just promised a little bit of chutney back in return. And a friend online has actually shared with me a recipe for green tomato chutney that she thinks is really, really good. So I'm really keen to try that out. Let's get straight on with the green tomato chutney. That takes the longest, so I'm going to get that all in the pan and ready, and then we can kind of start working on preparing some of the chilies for the other dishes. So I've got most of these ingredients already weighed out, but the first thing we do have to do is rough cut these tomatoes into nice kind of chunks that you'd want in a chutney. Okay, so I'm about a third of the way through. I've got 1 kilogram of tomatoes in total. As you can see, they're just all different sizes. It's just anything that was left at the end of the crop or hasn't gone ripe yet that we want to use up. I'm just chopping them up really roughly. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be exact. By the time they've kind of been cooked down for, I think it's 2.5 hours in total, you're not really going to be able to tell. And I like quite a chunky chutney, so I'm just doing them into kind of small little bits that you can see. There's 3 main ingredients to this recipe. Obviously the green tomatoes, then we've got about 300 grams of apples and 300 grams of onions, and they're going to form the main bulk of the recipe. Then we've also got some kind of sugar, some sultanas or raisins. I'm actually using raisins because I don't have sultanas at the moment, so I'm hoping it's going to be fairly interchangeable. And then we've got a little bag of spices which we're going to do up in a muslin cloth. So the next job is to cut the onions and hope that I don't start crying. Oh, those are very, very potent and my eyes are burning. Whew. Okay, so that's all of the onions chopped, so we've just got the apples to go. So this probably isn't the most efficient way to do this, but I don't have an apple peeler or an apple corer, so this is what we're going with. Now, if the apple tree that's outside actually produces any decent number of apples next year, I might be investing in one, because this is long. Mind you, not as long as chopping 1 kilogram of tomatoes into pieces, so. Now, normally I would say you could just save and eat or use this apple peel and the apple cores for either trying to juice them or just eating the skin is quite nice. But I didn't really think, and I've cut them straight onto the board that I just cut onions on, and I don't think that would taste very nice. So they're just going to go in the compost with the rest of the food scraps that we're going to have for today. So this is a bit trial and error, but I have a feeling that these apples in particular, because it cooks for so long, are going to really boil down to nothing. So what I'm going to try and do is chop them up in fairly decent sized chunks, so that it still has like a bit, you can still get those kind of apple bites in the chutney. So we're just going to do a really rough chop. I'm going to chop them, the onions and tomatoes are about the same size, but I'm probably going to do the apple pieces about twice as big to see if we can kind of, they might still just integrate into and kind of just blend into the sauce and become like a really nice sweet sauce, but we might be able to get just a little bit of apple crunch in the final result. We've now got in the pot, we've got the apples, the onions, the green tomatoes, we've got raisins, and I put a couple of cloves of garlic in there as well. So we're just going to do up the spices, and we have got a chopped up chilli, some crushed, kind of roughly chopped root ginger, and just half a tablespoon of pickling spice. So I'm going to wrap this up in a muslin and drop this in the pan to cook, and then right at the end we'll pull out the muslin and remove the spices. All the flavour and bits that we do want from here will be in the juices. So we just pour that in the centre. And there's probably official ways to do this. I just knock them up at the corners and I tend to find it doesn't really come out. There we go, and that's all the spices just tied up in the muslin, and we just drop that in the pot as it is. We're going to leave the lid on and just let it bring it up to heat, and then it simmers for we're going to simmer it for an hour, so it's going to stay there for a really, really long time. So a lot of the juices from the tomato and the apples will really start to come out and thicken up, and it'll all really come together, and the spices should really infuse as that starts to happen. So we're going to leave the lid on, and next I think we're going to chop the chillies for the dehydrator. What we're doing here is really, really straightforward. I'm just going to cut off the top and then cut a slit down the side, which is basically to allow, with dehydrating you want maximum airflow. So that's just going to allow the air to hit more of the pepper at the same time. And then we're going to leave these in here probably for almost 24 hours, because where we've got a thick flesh, we really want to make sure it's dried through. I'm just going to stick this in the dehydrator for 24 hours, and then we'll come back to them tomorrow and we'll crush them up and see what they turned out like. Oh, that's cooking away nicely, so we're just going to give that a quick stir and start cutting up the jalapenos for the cowboy candy or candied jalapenos. And here are the rest of the jalapenos that we harvested from the greenhouse last week. So we're going to get these sliced up. Again, we're not going to bother de-seeding them. We're just going to cut off the tops and kind of slice them into kind of thick rings. So that's all cut up, ready to go. And one of the reasons that I really like the look of this recipe, A, because it sounds delicious, B, it's also really, really quick. It's literally 5 minutes of getting the vinegar and the sugar heated up, and then 5 minutes of cooking it all in, and then leaving it to cool for a little while and like really get thicken up. Half a cup of vinegar, then we have got a cup of sugar, and in there is also a little bit of ginger and turmeric. So that has basically come up to a boil now. All of the sugar's dissolved and it's just started to thicken up ever so slightly. So we're going to get the jalapenos in and get them cooking into it nicely. Okay, so it's been about 5-10 minutes and we've taken it off the heat, and that vinegar and sugar mixture with the spices has turned into this really nice kind of syrup that's coating the jalapenos. So I'm holding my hopes out that these are going to be really, really nice. We're going to give that just a few more seconds to cool down so it's not quite so much boiling lava. And then we are going to just decant it into a little jar like this, which will seal. Now this isn't something that you'd want to use for canning or for anything like that. You could do a much, much bigger batch and can it, and there are loads of recipes online for canning. But I've really just done enough for one small lot to see if we like the taste. So it'll go in this jar, and that will just go straight in the fridge, and then that should last for a few weeks. Okay, here goes. Let's take the jalapenos out first, I think. Now, I need to acquire a funnel. As you can probably tell, I don't have a funnel. And there we go, one gorgeous jar of candied jalapenos. I'm going to let that cool down even more, and then we will give it a bit of a taste tomorrow to see what it's like. I have had one sneaky one that was a little bit too hot, but it was absolutely delicious. So we'll see what the rest are like when it's cooled. It is getting late and the dinner's in the oven, so I'm just going to finish off tonight by getting the Dehydrated turned on. It was a bit noisy, so I didn't want to do it until I'd finished filming, and putting the last of the vinegar and the brown sugar into the apple chutney. So we're just gonna put those in, let them dissolve, and let it simmer for another hour and a half, and then we'll turn it off, let it all cool down and get it into jars, and I'll show you the final result tomorrow morning. Hey guys, it is the next evening and I've got everything laid out here so that I can show you the results of the candied jalapenos and the chutney. We're going to do a quick taste test. And I've also got the dried chilies that have come out of the dehydrator. So in the end, these were left in, so I set the dehydrator to about 50 to 55 degrees, and I put them on about 8 o'clock last night, and they came off about 12 o'clock today. So that's just under, oh, that's bad maths on the fly, isn't it? So that's 16 hours. So the last thing we're going to do with these, so these are crisped up really, really nicely. So I was a bit worried about these because they've got a bit fleshy, but actually, I don't know if you can hear, but they've got a really good crunch to them. So I decided, as I've not got many of them, because this was just a trial run, I'm going to crush them up a little bit. So I've got kind of bigger flakes, and then I'll put a little jar of that on the spice rack, and we'll just, we'll just use them in general recipes and bits and pieces like that. I'm going to quickly transfer them to the pestle and mortar. To be honest, you could use anything to crush them up. It doesn't have to be a pestle and mortar. I imagine, I could literally break them up on my hand. They're really, really breaking quite well. And they're quite dry. So let's just pull them all off into here. Oh, I'm losing some seeds, but that's fine. I'm sure they have plenty of heat in them. Okay, so I'm just going to really roughly, can you hear that? That is a beautiful sound. Okay, I think we are done there. I'm going to leave it at that. So I've left them as a really kind of rough cut because I want kind of decent sized flakes. I don't know if you can see in there. There's a real nice mix. I kind of love the colours where they were kind of different stages of ripe. You've got kind of a green, yellow and amber, red and red going on. So they look really, really cool. I'm just going to put them into a little spice jar that I've got. We've got the kind of reusable spice jars that we put our dried herbs in. And oh, that chili's got a kick. And Sam has made me these little labels. I don't know if you can see there. They're like really cute little labels with her label maker. She's actually done that for all of my jars and they look really awesome. Stop sneezing from the chili. Oh, it's potent. Okay, so I was trying to say is that Sam and I actually went out at lunch today and we bought a little funnel because I was really struggling without one yesterday. So I decided to treat myself and get a little funnel. It's funny how sometimes I get so excited about things like this. Right, and actually that fits quite nicely onto there. So we just tip it in. Like that. You probably want to see that. It's just going in quite nicely. Oh, look at that. That's almost one whole jar. And there we go. So yeah, I'll just pop the lid on here. So we had a kilogram of tomatoes and that's come up into 2 nice jam sauce sizes and a little clip jar I'm actually going to give to my mum in return, seeing as she donated the green tomatoes and a couple of the apples. Actually, it seems more than fair. That and I think even between, there's just 2 of us at home and there's only so much chutney 2 people can eat, and this won't be the only chutney that we've got in our fridge. So yeah, we're going to give that away to my mum. We'll put a couple in the fridge. So we're going to try that on a bit of cheese and crackers in a second. I haven't tried it yet. I've been really trying hard to avoid it, so I've been waiting for the taste test. Sam has tried it and said that she liked it. So far we've got a 50% success rate, which means it's probably going to get eaten. And then also we've got the Candied Jalapeños. So they, we saw them come off the heat. They've been in the fridge overnight, and the syrup has really thickened up. They look really, really good. So we're going to try a couple of those as well. I imagine they've got quite a kick to them. So yeah, let's have a... Oh yeah, they've got a really nice... They're like kind of sugar coated. I mean, they're candied, so of course they are. But they've got this kind of proper... I don't know if you can see that. It's like pulling away the syrup. And it's got this kind of really shiny sheen to it. So I'm going to put that there. We'll try that in a second. Okay, so first, let's try a bit of the chutney. So I've never had green tomato chutney before, so I have no idea what I'm expecting to taste. So it will just be a case of whether or not we like it. Oh, that's really nice. Big one. It's a little and it's got the sweetness obviously of a chutney because it's got a lot of brown sugar in it. It's kind of almost got the like sharpness, which I'm presuming is the green tomatoes. That is really, really nice. I'm going to enjoy the rest of those. Yeah, I think it's good call keeping the apple chunks slightly chunky. I think I mentioned I like quite a chunky chutney. If you wanted it a bit finer, a bit smoother, you could really dice all the individual vegetables much, much more. But I've left all of mine quite chunky, so you can really taste the individual bits in there. And yeah, that's absolutely delicious. So, big fan on that one. So now, the one that I'm really excited for is the Candied Jalapeños, because, I mean, these are more sugar than they are jalapenos and vinegar. Like, sugar is definitely the highest ingredient. So I'm kind of working on the basis that anything that's got that much sugar in has got to taste nice, but you never know. And weirdly, my sweet tooth can sometimes be kind of hit and miss. And it's I've never heard of it in the UK. It's a really, really American thing, I think. Or certainly it might just be coming over, or maybe it's just something I've never heard of. But, yeah, let's give it a go. Oh, that's really good. That would be absolutely lovely on a topping on anything. I can imagine on something like nachos. That would be amazing. It is really, really sweet from the sugar and the vinegar syrup. I imagine if you wanted to bring it down a little bit in sweetness, you always could drop the sugar levels. Oh, but honestly, that's delicious. Oh, it's got quite a kick though. It's still jalapenos, and I left all the seeds in. It's still got all of its heat. I think the sweetness really counteracts that, and that is really, really nice. I think I might have to grow more jalapenos next year, because I would quite happily eat loads of jars, and we've only actually got the one little jar, so I think it's going to be precious food this winter. But next year I am definitely growing more jalapenos. Delicious. So, I have to say, of the 3 things that we were trying out for preserving this year, this evening, 2 evenings, we've done the green tomato chutney, which is absolutely delicious, the candied jalapenos, which are amazing. Definitely, that's something, like green tomatoes, there's always going to be green tomatoes. I probably won't specifically grow anything for it, but it's a really good one that I'll put in the list of if and when you get that end of crop green tomatoes, I'll do them. The candied jalapenos though, I will definitely be growing extra jalapenos. I've actually got 2 of them which have come in. 2 of these chilli plants behind me are actually jalapeno plants that have come in for overwintering. But I might well see if I can get another couple growing for next year and get a really nice big batch, because I think that would not only be a great one to eat for us loads at home, but also one that I could give away, because I've never heard of it. It's something that a couple of people that I've mentioned to haven't heard of it, so that'd be a really, really good one for gifting. So yeah, next year more jalapenos for sure. And the dried chilies, that was so easy. You saw it took me like 5 minutes to chop up all the peppers. They just sat in the dehydrator for, what do we work it out as earlier? Something like 16 hours? Something like that. That was really rough. It was kind of, I put it on overnight, checked it in the morning, and then kind of, as I came down during work in the morning, had a cup of tea or for lunch, kind of just took a gauge of when it seemed done, and it was about midday that felt right. And that was so easy. They've just crushed up, and that's going to go into the pantry, and I'll just go in the spice jar, and we're going to add this to all kinds of recipes. If you want to follow along and learn as we carry on growing as much food as we can out in the garden and in the kitchen and trying to use all of that, don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Instagram at A Homegrown Journey. See you soon.